All right, so yesterday we learned about a word called a transversal. A transversal was one line that touched two or more lines. So we learned some relationships. What did we call the relationship between the angles that were in the same spot at their intersection? Corresponding. So top left, bottom right, and so on and so forth. Those were corresponding. And then what about the angles that were inside of the double lines and on opposite sides of the transversal? Alternate interior. When we're saying inside, you can draw a box if that helps you mentally see it. What if they were not on opposite sides, but they were on the same side? Consecutive interior. And what if they were on the outside of the double lines and on opposite sides of the transversal? Alternate exterior. Good. So make sure you don't memorize the numbers. You memorize where they are, because your transversal could be sideways like this. So what kind of angles would these two be? Alternate interior. What kind of angles would these two be? Alternate exterior. What kind would these two be? Corresponding. Did I get them all? These two. Consecutive interior. Yeah. So then today we're just going to review the ones we already know and the ones we have previously learned, like vertical angles. Where are vertical angles located? Opposite of each other, and they only touch by a vertex, right? So if you have, this is where 4 highlighters come in, we have these two are vertical to each other. I believe those are numbers 1 and 4. Correct me if I'm wrong. Wonderful. So remember, the numbers don't really matter. If you just want to highlight, the spots, then you can. 2 and 3 would also be vertical, so in a second color. 5 and 8 would be vertical to each other. And 6 and 7. So what do we know about their measures? They're congruent. So make sure you remember that. They're congruent. So same measure. All right, and then the second is a linear pair. So linear pairs, there are so many of them. You only have 4 colors. Technically, you would need 8 to show all of them. That would be a hot mess. So, let's see. We could draw the numbers. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have talked about linear pairs in chapter 1 and 2. We'll just highlight some just to refresh our memories. So, we'll start with 1. Technically, 1 is a linear pair with which angles? 2 and 3. But we're only going to highlight one of them. Which one do we want to highlight? 1 and 2. Sounds good? 2 is a linear pair, not just with 1. It's technically a linear pair with 4. We're not going to highlight that, though. We'll highlight 4 and 3 because they're a linear pair. So essentially, any of these angles that are next to each other are a linear pair. 5 is a linear pair with 6 and 7. This time we could just highlight 7 so you could see that you can have a linear pair going the other direction. So 5 is a linear pair with 6, but we highlighted 5 and 7. 6 is also a linear pair with 8. And 8 is still a linear pair with 7. There's just a lot of them. So how many degrees do we know? What do we know about linear pairs? Are they congruent or supplementary? They're supplementary. Sorry that my S looks like an 8, but deal with it what you will. It says supplementary. So on your quiz, you'll need to be able to know, given one angle, we'll say this is 110 degrees, and know what all of the rest of the angles would be. And you could technically know them using only 3 properties. 2 of them you already learned, and then I mentioned corresponding yesterday. So if this was 110, right, vertical would also be 110, right? So across would be 110. How would I find the angle right next door? Subtract from 180. So what's 180 minus 110? 70, which means vertical of that would be 70. So you know this, right? Then the only other thing you need to know are corresponding angles. Corresponding angles are in the same spot. So what can you guess about their measures? They're going to be the same. So that means if we have 110 in the top left, corresponding is in the top left. This would also be 110, which means vertical of that would be 110, which would mean next to that would be 70 and 70. We'll talk about the other relationships like tomorrow, like alternate interior. What do you notice about the alternate interior? You got 70 and 70, 110 and 110. They are congruent. They're not vertical, they're congruent. And then what about alternate exterior? You got 110 and 110. You got 70 and 70. What do you guess about their measures? They're congruent. And then you can see consecutive interior. They are not congruent, they are supplementary. So we'll go through those in 3.2. It's tomorrow. But those are the things you need to know for the quiz. So we're going to use all of that in this bottom section. I know all you have is the top portion. I would go ahead and write out angle 1, angle 2, and so on and so forth. And we will fill in the blank. So I'd put A, angle 1, angle 2, angle 3, angle 4. And then we will answer them. So letter A, we want corresponding angles. So corresponding with angle 1 is located in the top left. So what corresponds with angle 1 at the other intersection? Angle 5. So angle 1 and angle 5. Angle 2 is in the top right, so it corresponds with angle 6 is also in the top right. Angle 3 is in the bottom left. What else is in the bottom left? Angle 7. Angle 4 is in the bottom right, which corresponds with angle 8. Letter B, you want alternate interior. So you have these double lines. We're talking about inside of the double lines. So we have 2. You want them to alternate across the transversal. So your transversal is not up and down. It's side to side. Whoop, I drew that way wrong. Here's your transversal. I ran out of room, but it's transversal. So 2 is on the top. So what is alternate interior with 2? Angle 7. 2 and 7, which means angle 4 and angle 5. 2 and 7, 4 and 5. Alternate exterior. So again, you want outside the double lines. So 1 is on the outside, 1 and 8. And then 3 and 6. 1 and 8, 3 and 6. Then last, consecutive interior. So you want them on the inside of the double lines and on the same side of the transversal. So 2 and 5. 2 and 5 are on the top of the transversal, and then that would be 4 and 7 on the bottom. All right, so at this point, your notes are finished. We're just going to review the other things we learned yesterday. We had this picture. This is what your picture would look like on a quiz or a test. So yesterday you made a chart to remind yourself of the terms. You need your notes. I don't know why you're putting them away. All right, so you made a chart look like this, and we talked about whether the lines were coplanar and whether they intersected. So let's talk about parallel. Do parallel lines, are they on the same plane? Yes. Do they intersect? No. Perpendicular lines, are they on the same plane? Yes. And then do they intersect? Yes. And at their intersection, what happens? They form a right angle. All right, and then skew lines. Are they on the same plane? And then do they intersect? No. All right, so the directions aren't here, but just know that this is a box, and at every intersection there's a right angle. I didn't copy the directions, just so you know. So the first one, we're going to classify it as parallel, perpendicular, skew. Some of them might be none of the above. We'll talk about it when we get there. But we have AB and BC. So are they on the same plane? Yes. Do they intersect? Yes. And it's a box, so again in the directions it would have said that there would be a right angle here. So what do we call these? Perpendicular. AD, and BC, what do we think? Parallel. They're on the same plane. They will never intersect. EI and IH. Yeah, none of the above. I'll answer you in a second. You have a question about this picture right here?
I do.
Okay. Does it pertain to the last three we did? Okay, let's ask at the end. We have BF, and EH, skew. They are not on the same plane. They do not intersect. EF and CG, skew again. And then last we have AB and GH. They're skew. Why are they not parallel? They're not on the same plane. So a lot of people would put parallel here, and they are not. Yes, sir.
So, say you have a plane where lines intersect but you don't make lines.
Then they're intersecting lines. Make sure you're not studying something else in my class. Normally I crumple them up and throw them away, so I would put it away. Yes?
How do you know that it's perpendicular to the box?
I didn't copy the directions. First of all, it's a box, right? So boxes will not close. Door frames will not close if you don't have a right angle. So it's box. It also, I didn't copy the directions. All right. So at this point, we're going to take out the laptops.